everyone. Welcome to another episode of Second Act Actors. I'm your host, Dr. Janet McMorty, and I'm still a medical doctor simultaneously trying to pursue a career in acting. My guest this week is Daniel Thomas. Daniel is oh my goodness, he's such a cool guy, everybody. He is a Australian-born actor living in Berlin. Yes, had to get that correct. Not many Australian-born actors, I think, living in Berlin. He is so cool. He has a past history of being an architect as well as a punk rock drummer. How cool is that? He's also a father, which was a big nexus into his shift into his career in acting. We have an incredible conversation. He has amazing stories to tell. I mean, come on. He was a punk rock drummer. He's got stories from that era in his life. He is so cool. Please enjoy Daniel Thomas.
I'm Australian and I'm living in Germany.
God, that's terrible. As a Canadian, we've pride ourselves on knowing the accents. And as soon as you said that, I was like, Janet, what is your problem? That is very clearly an Australian accent.
I must say mine has toned down a bit having been in Europe so long. I think Australians speak very much like it's very nasal, and I think mine has dropped out of the nose a bit because I've been in Germany so long. So
How long have you been there?
I've been here 10 years, so I wouldn't say sometimes it's not actually the easiest accent to pick anymore. But no, so I'm Australian based in Hamburg, Germany.
Cool. That's awesome. And so, tell me your story. How did you get into this crazy business?
Yeah, well, acting was something I had a real curiosity toward when I was a kid. I did a children's TV workshop and they interviewed me after we made this like music video. I was like 8 years old. And in the interview, they were like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I actually said I wanted to be an actor. And it just came out of quite a pure place. And it kind of shocked me when I said it because I'd never actually verbalized it, but I had this curiosity toward it. And then as life does, life got in the way, various family things happened and just life kind of intervened with the dreams as it does. And by the end of high school, there was a lot of noise around me and I was very confused, and I very much got pulled into everyone else's voices about what I should do because I was a little bit lost with direction. And I'd always been a good drawer, so everybody had just told me I was going to be an architect. And with that pressure that comes with finishing high school to get a place, I just, I started doing architecture and then went down that path for a solid 10 years. And it was the creative aspect of architecture that attracted me to it. And I had big aspirations, like I wanted to be like a star architect and, like this kind of big famous architect. But actually, once I got out of university, it was very corporate, and there was only a small part of it that I was finding really creative, and the corporate aspect of it and the pressure really started to get to me. I was also burning the candle at both ends. I was playing drums in bands. I was partying a lot. I was working full time. At one point I was studying as well, and I burnt out. Like I just crashed and burned. And, I'd been in bands since I was 18, and that was giving me my performance juice. Like that was really fulfilling me as like a performer. But yeah, when I crashed and burned and started suffering like pretty severe anxiety, I realized I had to take a pretty dramatic left turn. And one night on a dance floor in Melbourne, where I'm from, the band I was in and I literally just said, why don't we take this band to London? And within 3 months, we'd put all our instruments on a ship. We'd quit our jobs. We'd broken up with girlfriends, left our families, and we were ready to do shows in London, and we were in London ready to do our first show. So then I had this very intense 2-year experience in London, which was amazing because I was playing shows 2 or 3 times a week, rehearsing, being a full-time drummer. And it was really a chance for me to get more in line with my truer self, particularly creatively. And performing was lots of crazy on-stage experiences and the intensity that comes with being in a band in this other country. And then at the end of that 2 years, the band kind of fell apart. We couldn't hold it together. And I met my ex, who introduced me to Germany. And I had a curiosity to Germany already. I'd been to Berlin and I loved Berlin. And then she introduced me to Hamburg, and I really fell in love with Hamburg as a city, a lot because of its rock history and its music history, the Beatles history. And so then the kind of second chapter, the second act, I had my son here, and I relocated to Hamburg when he was born. And from that point on, when I decided to build a life here in Hamburg, that's when I started to return to my childhood dream of film and acting. And I was literally told straight to my face that I was insane, that, if I was in LA, it would be hard enough. But as an Australian actor in Germany, I was just told that I had zero, like practically, there was no need for me, was what I was told. And so I was kind of trying to knock on a lot of doors, and then I had some pretty cool opportunities, landed a big commercial, like an international thing. And then that was a really unique experience because it proved to me that it was like, hey, I can do this here. And so that 10-year period, my son's 11 now, that whole time I've been building, and now I'm in a really, really good place with a lot of really valuable experience in film. That's a heck of a long story there, and there's a number of parts.
Oh my gosh. There are so many times, and I'm counting them, right? Where if this was a movie, it would be like, yeah, I'm rooting for you, the main character. Do your thing. Which 100% obviously I am, because I am a second act actor too. But then when you look at the different phases and the different paths, there's so many ways where I can only imagine, my question, was there someone, or was it you, who reality kind of said at all these different points, right? Kid to architect, architect to rock star to actor in Germany, when somebody said, what are you doing? Reality needs to check in, right? Because there's so many practical, pragmatic people out there, and a lot of it is our own self. Did that ever happen, or did you ever feel that pressure from anyone?
Reality checked in often, and it checked in the most when things fell apart in London, because I went to London pursuing art, and it was unsustainable, and the pressure over there, like, kind of, it's an expensive town, trying to do the artist thing. This is the thing. I went there, kind of on an ego-fueled thing, thinking that I was going to be a famous rock star. And it was like a really intense school of dealing with the things that I really had to front up to. And so, like often happens in life, that didn't play out the way I had imagined or expected. And ultimately, I ended up in Germany with a family. But that was so much more valuable. And, when my son was born, in answer to also what you're asking, when you become a father, at that point I was like, well, realistically, father, and I was single parenting early on. Like, unfortunately, the first relationship didn't work out. So I was single parenting in a foreign country where English is not the first language. And so I was like, with myself, I was like, realistically, you may have to, you got to suck it up. You've got a child to support here. But at the same time, I was like, if he doesn't see me taking a swing and if I go back to my architecture world, that's not the best for him. He needs to see me have taken a swing. And, I'm just really, because, he's always observing me, and it's been so much more valuable for him to see me having swings than to be stuck in some miserable job. So there's been a lot of reality moments, but in answer to the people questioning the realities, it actually made me more determined when people, particularly here early on, told me that I was crazy. I was like, no, we live in quite a global community now where, anything is possible. But I really had to get to a place where I started embracing my uniqueness, which was, I'm an Australian in Germany. And that took me a long time. I threw myself into everything. I was throwing myself into all sorts of film jobs here, like extra work and everything, just to get the experience. But then over time, I was like, I really just need to embrace what's unique about me here and take things into my own hands as much as I can.
What you said about, and it's what you said about your son watching you and observing you. It's I've heard similar things from other parents, second act actors, and it in no way gets diluted every time I hear it. It just like hits me right in the core and makes my hair stand on end how powerful that is. And I think what I struggle with the most in this second act, and I wonder if you have an answer to this. Please tell me you have an answer to this. Please solve my question. Because, I don't know, I'm such a pragmatic scientist. That's how I've always been. I have a tough time balancing the idea of you have to be a reasonable, logical human being in this capitalist society that rewards making money and not sharing your art with the world because that's whimsical and frivolous, right? With the other side of me that goes, please, for the love of God, follow your dreams, because what else is there in this stupid life on this rock, right? How do you balance that? Because it's necessary to do that. And I think it's like you were saying, you want your child to see that, but then also you have to put food on the table and all that stuff. Is there an answer?
I think I just tried. I tried so many things that just repeatedly didn't work. And so it was like, I just kept trying and kept repeat. Like, I did have to return to architecture a few times and take various jobs, and just over time from trying all these, from having all these different life experiences and professional experiences, I just realized certain things, like we're just built a certain way. There's certain things that are instilled in us. And I would get really anxious in like small corporate meetings. And then I would get on a stage and I would have a very different kind of excitement or anxiety that was really healthy. And I was like, why can't I sit in a meeting? Why does that throw me sideways? And it's just because I'm not built to do that. Things have to be aligned. If things aren't aligned with me in a creative or artistic sense, it doesn't end well. But I tried over and over again. So I just got to a point where I was like, I really don't have a choice anymore. Like I have to pursue this. At the same time, trying to make ends meet when times are tough has been a real challenge. But I've always tried to hold on to a faith and a trust that if you follow what you're saying, that artistic part of you, that quiet voice. I just have a faith that when you follow that, there's a trust there. But often, like I say, with the drumming experience, things don't work out how you think they're going to work out, but you always learn something. That's what's been huge for me. Every time I've kind of landed a significant job, I've thought, oh, this is my break, or this is my, and it's never worked out how I've thought it's going to in my head, but it's always taught me something really valuable.
I think that, and I know in Riverside there's this feature where you can say, oh, remember that clip? I just did that because I want to come back to this so often. What you said there is something I want to put on a t-shirt. Well, it's the idea of, my question to you was, how do you balance it? And what your answer was so beautiful. It was like, you just keep trying. That's what your son will see. How powerful is that? It's not, oh, here I am being successful at balancing. Nobody is. But what success is, you just keep trying to, and you just keep learning from it. Whew, that's lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. And, without getting too sort of philosophical or cliche, it really, that's taking a swing thing, it's like, it doesn't matter, like it doesn't necessarily matter if it doesn't work out. It's as long as there isn't the regret, if you've taken a swing and missed, there's no regret there. It's if I'm, sitting at the bar when I'm an old man or whatever saying, oh, I wish I took a swing, as opposed to I took a swing and it didn't necessarily work out. I'm cool with that. It's the stepping forth into it. But like when I first came to Germany, it was crazy. Like I was, I threw myself into an acting class here, and I literally, every class early on, I almost turned around and left. I couldn't get myself through the door. I had that much fear about it, and I literally had to push myself through the door. And once I was in the class, I couldn't really leave. And then at the end, I was just so excited by it and so happy at the end of every class. But there was a lot of fear to overcome when I started to really, really pursue it.
It brings you so much joy.
Yeah, I think it's the storytelling aspect, and I think I read something that you said about this second act thing, that this richness of life experience, like this full toolbox of life experience, is so valuable when you realize that you can bring that into a character or bring that into a story. And because I came to it relatively late in this second act, I was a lot of fears around doing it. And then I realized I had this wealth of rich life experience that I could draw from. And when I started to draw from stuff and found that could resonate in a performance or a character, it was awesome. And just, I guess I'm always seeking presence, I'm a bit of an overthinker, and I love about acting is chasing that presence. And I also love it when the stakes are high. So I love it when when there's a real risk of failure. I actually like that.
Do you think that came from your live music, like where there's the ultimate, like you're just constantly at a high stakes? It's
Absolutely.
Just constantly high stakes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Very perceptive of you, because it's that informed me no end. And that's when it clicked for me, because I was like, oh, you've been drumming now you're going to change into this. But then I was like, actually performing on stages was my theater. I'm not a theater guy. I'm very much film, but particularly the stuff that happened in London on stages, It was I had to sink or swim. We rehearsed, we prepared, we had to let it go and trust that we knew all our stuff, and then things would go wrong. And then it was dealing with those things in the moment. And every gig was sort of like accelerated growth in that sense, particularly when things blew up or fell apart. I've got a lot of stories of shows that went sideways in various ways. But those moments, exactly what you're saying, they sort of, they informed me as an artist, and a performer, and it was just so invaluable to have. So that was really like my intensified kind of theater experience, punk rock drumming.
Yeah. I grew up in a punk rock home, Vancouver in the 90s, and I was taught, it's funny, I had a guest who was he's a lawyer and an actor, his name's Rudy, and he played punk rock music all throughout his 20s, and there's so many correlations between punk rock and acting, it's incredible. How can it not inform your acting career?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And all of it. All of it.
Well, and it's funny because I don't know, I think, he had a really interesting take on what's the most punk rock type of person. And he's like, it's somebody fighting the law, the lawyer, right? So he's like, that's why I became a lawyer, so I could be really punk rock and fight the power and all that stuff. And I think even that translates into, you're doing now a career that society's like, oh, cute, best of luck. You're an Australian in Germany, good luck. And you're like, I think this is the most punk rock thing I could do.
That's an awesome analogy. That's actually an awesome analogy. It's the punk rock against the pushback of what the heck do you do for a living? Like it is. And I haven't been able, once that was like instilled, I haven't been able to shake that punk rock attitude, because like in London, there were so many promoters trying to exploit us. Like it was just, we were doing all the essential like marketing for shows and bringing out crowds and like doing they had to do very little, some of these guys, and then they were still trying to like shaft us sideways. It was like, so it was really like, no, we're gonna like fight our way onto stage, and so it's just I can't shake that,
that determination you said, right? When somebody says you're insane, you're like, absolutely right. I played punk rock music for a living. I decided to quit an architecture career, right? I am insane. Bring it on.
Yeah, absolutely. There's kind of nothing. It got to a point where there was nothing to lose,
Yeah.
So, and that's it's a good place to come from. Like, just. It's like I like when I arrived in Germany, like I was happy I survived London. I was like, I don't know if you find, but putting things in context to where, sometimes you lose sight of context, and it's, when you compare one scenario to another,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and when you're in the thick of things, you have no idea about context at all, right? When you're the one in it and everyone's circling around you, looking in, going, whoa, what is happening to you? And you're like, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I'm in the middle of it all. Do you notice, we've already talked about the similarities between punk rock and acting. What about architecture and acting? Anything that you've pulled in from that education into now your acting career?
Absolutely. Designing a character. The process I went through in design was pretty similar. Like I started very clunky in design, like I wouldn't really think of a building as being like a harmonized. I'd sort of draw the front and I'd draw the side, but then over time I learned more about like finding harmony within the designs, and then it was like, well, you've got a floor plan, there's your script, right, and then you've got all the things you're layering over the top and your furniture and stuff. I could make a lot of analogies about it, but this design process has informed the way I approach characters. So I never thought architecture would, but also actually aside from the acting in a filmmaking sense, architecture's been awesome because it's light and composition and perspective. And actually one strange thing it helped me with is hitting my mark. Because I have an understanding of spatially. So I was like, when in some early experiences, I was like, oh, how the heck do I hit the mark without looking at it and stuff? And then I was like, oh, I've got some kind of eye lines and things that I could pull from. I don't know how. I think just measuring up a lot of buildings and stuff, I have a good retention of like space.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you do. Right? I think about some of the things, well, again, we could think globally about how we as second act actors feel like we are behind because we didn't go to theater school or whatever. But as you mentioned before, what we have is great wiseness and maturity from life experiences. And I mean, of course you would know how to do that better than anyone. Like, I think about my medical career. It's like, I can take criticism really well because I've been screamed at by old male surgeons for a decade. Like, of course it's gonna benefit us.
That's so invaluable. It's so like that's quite that sounds intense. Like that's a really invaluable character building experience.
Yeah. Well, I think everything we do, I think we think about the idea of, okay, now we are in our whatever decade of life we're in. The train of acting has left the station. And we should have been on it when we were 8, and our parents should have been famous directors or movie stars, and now the train is gone, and we're just trying to catch up to it. And it's like, no, all the things that have already happened didn't just vanish in a puff of smoke. They are there, feeding us, and thank goodness. I think that's
absolutely
really cool. Now, I really, really want to know, how in God's name did you start an acting career in a city, a place where you don't, like, it's not the same language? How do you do that? Did you do it on your own? How did you figure it out?
It was uncanny. Like there's a guy here. I did a couple of workshops and stuff. So I took practical steps. I went in, enrolled in a Meisner class, and then I did like a cinematic sword workshop because I love, I've got a martial arts background as well. And where that fight choreography workshop was, I went there and I was like, I said to the guy who ran it, I was like, can I maybe have a job? I'd be happy to even just clean the studio, like just, however I can help out. And he sat me down and he said, what do you really want to do? And I said, well, I'm pursuing acting now and I just want to be around it. And I love the martial arts aspect. And he was a stunt guy, so he was in the industry. And he just cut through it. He's like, you're not really here to clean. What do you want to, and when I said that, he basically acted as my agent and got me this commercial audition. And then I got that commercial. And so when I got that commercial, the biggest thing, like I said earlier, was just that showed me that, hey, I mean, they were looking for two international guys, right? And I was like, hey, I might not have got this opportunity back home necessarily. But so when I got that, I thought, okay, this is going to land, like this is going to roll on, because that was quite early on. But then, of course, there was donuts.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I had the exact same thing. Booked my very first audition ever. Huge commercial. And then crickets. So I was like, this is easy.
Yeah, when you get one from one, and then you think, wow, this is just, what's everyone do? And then just crickets.
I'm so good at this. Anyways, sorry. I empathize.
So after that, I was like, well, how am I going to get like just set experience? And then I started doing a lot of but like German set experience. And then I started getting, I had an extra agent and I went on so many extra jobs, but it was kind of like film school to me because I was just watching and observing a lot. I still had some some romantic ideas that the director would come up and say, hey, and a couple of times I did, out of that extra work, I ended up getting some small bit parts. So, drug dealer they love cop shows here in Germany. They just love cop shows. So like cop number 3, drug dealer, and they're the smaller bits. But again, on our theme of people's heads exploding about what we do, people's heads double explode in Germany when you're an Australian and you tell them that you've been acting in Germany, because they all know how bad my German is, right? Because it's like rocket science language. So they'd say, oh, what did you do last week? And I was like, I was a drug dealer on this cop show. And they would just be like, they couldn't piece it together. But they would always, the first thing they would say was, did you have dialogue? And it did, the job didn't count unless I had dialogue. But I'd be like, of course I had no dialogue. They're not going to give me, I don't think they're going to risk giving me dialogue. But it became a thing because I was going on all these jobs and I was getting experience and, being happy about these jobs. But everyone would say, did you speak? Did you speak? And I'd be like, And then one time I was a delivery guy on a cop show, and I had to wheel the fridge into the kitchen to the cop station. And when I wheeled the fridge in, the other actor took it, and then he said something to me in German, and I had to respond because it would have been weird. Like I had to respond, so I just said, "Have a nice day" in German, and I was like, "They're gonna call cut," and they didn't, and I was like, I think I just said 3 words in German on German TV. I've like done the impossible. And I went home, told my girlfriend, I'm like, I spoke. And so we were really keen for when the episode came out. And then when the episode came out, there was a montage of music over the entire scene, which they knew was going to be there already. And it didn't matter. It did not matter what I'd said. I could have said anything because they already knew there was going to be music over the top. But to bring it home, I kept doing the extra work. That led to some bit parts. But then I was always building networks of, indie filmmakers around me and finding like people around me that we wanted to make stuff together. And through those, networks and people I was meeting, that led to projects. And as I say, I actually started in recent years to do a lot less, and that was better because I was like, you can do 50 or 60 extra shoots and a couple of, but is this moving you forward? And then when I started to embrace making my own stuff and collaborating with people around me, it's a lot less, but the quality was much more important in terms of what we were trying to do. And that's been awesome now that I've stopped trying to do too much.
Your filmmaking. They always say, they being the global they, make your own stuff. And it's intimidating. And I can only imagine it's more intimidating in a country where you are an Australian in Germany. What has that been like? How did that process start? And what has that been like for you?
Yeah, so the first thing I did was a pilot, and I drew from my own experience here, which was I'd been working on a van moving furniture. Mm-hmm. And what I loved about that experience was the international guys there was always such a mix of like cultures represented on these van jobs, like totally different, and we all had to find a way together to get these jobs done. And there was bit of comedy in it as well, like stuff that went down on these jobs because, you've got a client, you got a bunch of stuff, you got to move from one place to another. Somebody drops, breaks a lamp, but you've still got the rest of the day to go. And you've got this interesting mix of people. So the pilot I just put together a van team and a job and a client, wrote it, shot it, was one of the guys in the team. So I kind of was a bit ambitious with that first project in that I was, directing, acting, writing, like putting it all together. And that was a tough but very rewarding experience just to knock out that little pilot. And then from that, that picked up a few little small awards here in Europe. Like it's really small festivals and stuff, but it was just so awesome to have it kind of acknowledged in that way. But yeah, a lot of learning by doing in that experience. And I think I probably did too much, but I just felt I got to push this thing like over the line. Like I got to like push the mountain,
Been anything that's been surprising to you? Not just about the film industry in Germany, but how about the film industry just as a whole compared to, punk rock in London?
Absolutely. I've been surprised in different ways on every job I've done. It's surprised me. It's just I'm a bit stuck on this one.
That's okay.
Let me take two on that.
Sure.
It surprised me actually how much money I have seen on certain productions and like the level of budgets and crews, and it's given me a really good perspective of like what's necessary, like some of those smaller jobs I did, like big kind of TV movies where I was just background or whatever. Someone would come up to me with a clipboard, and then another person would come up to me with a clipboard, and I'd go, I already signed the thing like 5 minutes ago. And I'd be like, do we really need two people with clipboards? I was also like, it's awesome that everybody's working. Like, obviously we want the whole industry to be working, but because I was coming from this punk rock background, I was like, what's the sweet spot here in terms of like, what's too big, what's too small in terms of a crew? And then I was looking at the amount of money that was being prioritized because of this punk rock ethos. I was surprised to find that the constraints actually make you find more creative like solutions when the constraints are there. That's what happened with my pilot, was like there were so many constraints that I had to be really creative in finding ways to go about stuff as opposed to having like an unlimited budget. So a lot of those aspects have surprised me within the industry, what's necessary,
What's necessary, but also, what isn't necessary. Yeah, exactly. What is necessary, obviously what isn't necessary, right?
Yeah.
What you can make with a punk rock budget as opposed to what you can make with infinity money. And I don't know about you, but I mean, not to get all whatever, but that doesn't mean that the quality of what is produced is better.
Absolutely.
Which, I think in a lot of industries, the more money you put into something, the better it's going to be, right? Like, I want a nice car. I'm going to spend more. It's going to be better. We know for art, I think a lot of the time, or creativity, because it is so subjective, it's not necessarily the case, which can hurt your feelings a little bit, especially as a big industry with people who like to, I don't know, I'm going to say it, like, justify their job.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. And also seeing those amounts of money in architecture as well, back on the architecture thing, like seeing, I remember just having to pick like a color for like a big structure that was costing a lot of money. They're like, we need a color for it. And I was just like, make it orange, and then the apprentice kind of younger guy was like, man, how did you make that decision so quickly? And I was just like, you kind of just got to, But I saw, in a similar way, I saw big budgets and little budgets and where was it going and stuff. So again, the architecture thing has informed me so much more as a filmmaker than I thought it necessarily would.
Yeah, that So fascinating. So with that in mind, how would people describe what you do for a living these days? What would they say you do?
They struggle. They struggle. Just because I am very multifaceted, creatively, and I've tried to put myself in one lane. Like I've gotten frustrated at all the different lanes, and I've really, when somebody's just one thing, I'm like, that must be just so cool to just have that one thing. So I think people struggle because they see me doing a lot of different things. And because I have taken a lot of lefts and rights and changed careers, it's a continual struggle. But I must say, like, after the pandemic and stuff, things got a bit tough. The industry was shut down here and everything. So I was like, I had to take kind of a sort of another design job for a while. And I'd gone through these years of saying I'm an Australian actor in Germany, and seeing the eyes kind of spin and glaze over. And then as soon as I took this very secure temporary in my eyes, but this secure job, everybody, whenever they asked me questions, they were so satisfied, and it was such a neat answer. And I was like, I don't like that. I think I want to see the eyes spin again, because if everybody has a nice, neat little answer, it means that I'm not taking any risk. That was, and so I was like, why am I getting frustrated that people are like, yay, good on you. That makes perfect sense. You have a contract and you have this thing, you have your retirement sorted, you have it all perfect. Great. And I'd be like, I don't like this.
That's punk rock.
Yeah. I was like, it means I'm not leaning into the growth and the risk aspect.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, for sure. You mentioned a little bit earlier about crazy stories. Do you have any interesting stories from any time in your life? On set, on stage? I love this question because I get the coolest answers, especially from people who had second or in their second act. Do you have any crazy, fun, memorable stories?
I got stories from all those I got stories from all those worlds, but I just in London, talking about what we were talking earlier, about the kind of sink or swim thing. We're in Windsor, and Windsor's known for Windsor Castle, and we had this gig in a old, lavish sort of royal train ticket hall that was like a ballroom thing. And we went in there. We went to Windsor. We checked out the castle, and then we went into this ballroom where there was this really long, wide stage, and we were only a 3-piece. So I was very exposed as the drummer. The two guys were on the left and right, and I was in the middle. And the place filled up. There was like 500 people in there, but because it was tiles and glass and kind of all this decorative castle type stuff, the sound was tough, and the crowd, there was a really intense vibe, and the crowd was kind of silent. And then second song in, I was playing, and then this piece of metal just like shot over my shoulder, and I lost all the power in my foot, and my kick pedal had snapped out of the little foot pedal bit and flown over my shoulder, so I had no kick drum. And the guys just looked at me, and we finished the song without any kick. And then as soon as the song finished, I was like, I got to find this piece of metal. And so I got down on my hands and knees, and I was crawling around the stage like a mouse or a rat looking for this piece of metal. And my bandmates were just looking at me like they didn't like tell a joke or talk to and I was just crawling around on the stage trying to find this piece of metal, and the crowd were dead silent. And eventually I found it in the dark, like at the back of the stage. And I was like, okay, you just got to screw it back in the thing. And normally I would just screw it in, but I could not get it back in the, I couldn't get, and I had to meditate. I was like, just take a deep breath, just meditate. And then I got it back in the thing, and then we had, another 12 songs to go. But the point is, like, I think that was only probably 3 minutes in total of me trying to find the thing. But the amount of, like, growth and resilience that I gained in that 3 minutes with this little piece of metal was, like, one of the most valuable experiences I could have had going to London, because I grew so much in like 3 minutes. I didn't die. I survived. I had to get on with the show. And then I was like, that's a pressure cooker situation that helped, that's helped me thrive. It didn't flatten me. It's helped me like go on.
One, because I know how important the kick drum is to any type of music, especially the type of music you're playing. And the fact that the crowd is just silent, like they literally, I'm just envisioning this. It is just oh my God. And that feeling of this is lasting hours and hours and hours, but it's really not. It's that feeling of when you forget your line, on stage, when that's frozen. And I think how powerful, like you were saying, of an experience to reflect on and keep with you forever.
There's something about public bombing.
Oh, yeah.
Bombing in public. I've embraced public bombing, but now I don't bomb on the stage. I bomb at the supermarket trying to speak German every day. So my public bombing comes from trying to speak German in public. But now I've embraced that. Like you could either be hard on you. Now I've just embraced the craziness of like, the stuff that goes down at the supermarket checkout.
Yeah. I think, honest, I could wax poetic about, I live in Canada. We have 2 languages. Whenever I go to Quebec where they speak French, I speak decent French. But as soon as they hear me try and speak French, they can clock the accent and they just flip to English. I'm like, no, let me try. I'm trying to learn your language, please. You can laugh at me, but just speak to me in French.
Good on you though, because it's easy to go the lazy option. It is. Good on you for pushing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you have anything you are looking forward to coming up? Any projects coming down the pipe in 2024?
Yeah, I'm actually really excited for tomorrow because I've been collaborating with Idol Films, who are an awesome little production company here, and we're premiering 6 shorts in Berlin.
Cool.
They premiered. So one of them, I was the lead character, and we screened it here in Hamburg, and it was an awesome night late last year, and now we're taking it to Berlin tomorrow, and it's full. The cinema's full, so that's heading down there tomorrow. But there's a lot of there's really a lot of gratitude because I have all these. I often have where the heck am I moments. How did I end up here? And putting things in context. But when these screenings and things, they're really just. I never would have imagined some of the opportunities that I've created and that have presented for me here. If somebody said you're going to, be screening a little short in Berlin, 10 years ago, I just, couldn't have imagined that. So a lot of gratitude.
What you said right there is so powerful, and I couldn't have imagined the opportunities I had created for myself. I think that is so important because, like you said the thing I had created for myself, yes, and then the next part was, or that had, come up for me. And I think, I don't know, I have a bit of an issue when people talk about, what is meant to be will be, I'm going to manifest this, blah, 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 and I intend intentions. That's great, but I think so much about this, especially coming in it later in life, is the action that you do for yourself, creating it for yourself, and like you said, pushing the mountain yourself. that is so powerful, really hard to do, and props. Like, holy crow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, well, I agree with you. It's just taking ownership of all the aspects of it, the things that have presented, the things that you've pushed towards, the fear that you've lent into. Yeah. So, exciting times.
Yeah. And this is always my last question, and it's mean because it's a big one. Do you have any advice, words of wisdom for people who are looking to do something like you did, change careers later in life or explore more of their creativity later in life?
For sure. I give you a small but big answer.
My favorite.
No, I'm just not in an airy-fairy way. I'm a very big advocate for the intuitive, call it intuitive, instinctual voice. And if there's a small part of you, that little voice that keeps kind of tugging away, it's really about acting upon that and taking a step toward it. But like taking a small step, particularly if it's acting, if it's calling you in some way, there's no need to put pressure on yourself and be like, well, I have to, get fully trained in an instant or land it. It's just, I don't know, just buy a really good recommended book or, an acting book, or try and do a little monologue, put yourself on tape. Just take a tiny step in that direction. And I think we've said earlier, really it's all in the doing. It's so much is in the doing. Like there's a lot of talk, and there's a lot of talk in this industry. And things are only ever come from the doing, which is I'm not really big on the failures, call them the challenges that they may be, but stuff only comes from the throwing down and the doing side of things. The first time I went and did a film at my first acting workshop in Florence, of all places, in Italy, on my way to Germany, I had a monologue to do, and I went back to my little room in Italy, in Florence, and practiced it. And it was a really small class. There was only a few of us, and I'd never really done anything of that type of thing. And then the next day when I tried to do the monologue, I couldn't get the words out. Could not get the words out. Like a rabbit in the headlights, full rabbit in the headlights. And it was disaster for me. I was like, this is this thing you want to pursue, and like you just completely messed it up. And so then I just, with the coach, I just took it away, and we worked through it through the week. And then by the end of the week, they did a screening for all the school. There was like 30 or 40 students, and everyone had done monologues. And they played mine as like one of the final pieces. Not that it was a competition or whatever, but it came up all right in the end over a week. But I had to fall flat on my face.
So punk rock of you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thank you, Daniel, for being my guest this week. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule across the pond in Berlin to chat with me and my audience. I so appreciate you. I hope you'll all tune in next week for another episode of Second Act Actors. And if you enjoyed this episode, and if you're enjoying this podcast, please remember this is an indie production. I have no big network supporting me, so how you can support my little wee show is by rating and reviewing. If you could rate my podcast wherever you find it, review it. You can also do it on IMDb, however you like. That fills my little heart with joy and also allows other people to find this show. So if you're getting benefit from it, please consider rating and reviewing. I do read them all because I love reading them all, and that helps other people find the show. I hope you'll tune in next week for another episode of Second Act Actors. Bye!